every time we've seen these top 5 teams tangle this year, it's been an absolute classic. We got it with Bama, Georgia. We got it with Ohio State, Oregon. And now let's hope we get it with Texas and Georgia. College football has never been better. Interest has never been higher. Believe that we are at the dawn of the golden age of college football. It was an epic day of college football. It was one of those days where you fall in love with the sport all over again. Welcome into the program. This is the Joel Klatt Show. I am your host, Joel Klatt. This show is presented, as always, by Hampton by Hilton. We've got a great show for you today. I love these preview and pick episodes. We've got a lot of games to get into and some sneaky ones. I got to tell you, there are some really difficult selections. We were 4-1 again last week. You're welcome. 14-2 over the last 3 weeks. We're on a bit of a heater. That's right. Firing darts down like John Daly. And for the season, we're 25-12. That's 67%. You're welcome for your free vacation. Hey, remember, wherever you're listening to our show, please rate and review us. That'd be great. Invite a friend to listen to the program, and you guys can chat about it, all things college football. If you're on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to YouTube, click the like button, and leave a comment below, and we'll get into those comments at some point. And then wherever you like to social media, we are there. At Joel Klatt Show, wherever you are socialing these days. Is that how they say it? Is that how the kids say it? I'm not quite sure. But whatever. We continue. We've got a lot of good games to get into. And I'm telling you, this was one of the – I think this is the most difficult week to date of picks. I am not terribly confident, just as an FYI. Disclaimer about some of these picks, because these are tough lines. And remember, we're not cherry picking lines or overs and unders just to give you the best bets of the weekend. No. We're taking the best games, the one that you want to watch, the ones that you want to be involved in, and we are talking about them, and then we're giving you a score at the end. Let's start with my game. Big Noon Saturday is going to be in Bloomington, Indiana. Obviously not going to give a pick in this one, but just from a preview perspective, Nebraska heads out to face Indiana. And Matt Rule and this Nebraska team is exactly kind of what we thought they would be in the preseason, which is a much improved team. Both sides of the ball. The defense was solid last year. Now we needed a quarterback at Nebraska that didn't turn the ball over, and that's exactly what they're getting with their true freshman, Dylan Raiola. Meanwhile, Indiana, one of the best stories in college football. Curt Cignetti has done an incredible job at Indiana, and they've done it in a transfer fashion, right? I mean, this is a team that rolls in here 6-0 for the first time since 1967. A win this weekend, and it's real. This team could absolutely wind up even in a Big Ten championship game. I don't think that that's out of the realm of possibility. And Cignetti has transformed this roster in a very specific way through the transfer portal. 27 transfers on this Indiana team, 27. 13 of those came from James Madison with Curt Cignetti. Okay, 13 of them. Now, of the 27 transfers, 14 are starters. So you talk about transforming the on-field product in one off season. He's certainly done that. 7 of those transfers on each side of the ball. They can run it. They can throw it. The offensive line is playing maybe a little bit above their talent level, but certainly cohesive and doing a really solid job winning the line of scrimmage. That allows them to run the football and give Curtis Rourke, their quarterback, the opportunity to throw it when he wants to rather than when he has to. There we go. I always come back to that, folks, and that's what's making Rourke, I think, very effective this year. Now, this guy has a history of playing quality football. He was the MAC Player of the Year in 2022 at Ohio, and he's throwing now for nearly 300 yards per game and completing almost 74% of his passes. When I watch him play, there's really only one half of football that I felt like he made some what I would consider to be bad decisions and errant throws, and that was in the first half against Maryland. Both of his 2 interceptions on the year happened in that first half against Maryland. Poor weather, didn't play well. Bounced right back, played really well in the second half of that game. And I'm sitting there and it's like, hey, this guy is a really, really good player. It should be noted, and I love this philosophy from Cignetti. He went into the transfer portal and he needed to because the roster was depleted and he needed to improve right away. And he didn't just go in and say, hey, I just want 27 of the best transfers I can get. He looked for a very specific type of transfer, and this is what he looked for. He looked for guys that had played a lot of football, so experienced college football players at winning programs that had a chip on their shoulder. Curtis Rourke is like the poster child of that. And here he is playing incredibly well for Indiana. Now, this is undoubtedly going to be the most difficult task that Indiana's offense has faced. This is the number one scoring offense, by the way, in the Big Ten. Number two scoring offense in all of college football. They're one of two schools right now in our sport that is averaging over 300 yards passing and 200 yards rushing. The other is Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin. So Indiana's getting it done offensively. Now, this is their biggest test. This Nebraska defense is really good. They're physical. Their structure is solid. The only team that took advantage of them was Illinois. And to be honest, like, it was such an anomaly when you're watching the film throughout the year of Nebraska. They're so sound, and then all of a sudden it's like, man, what happened in that Illinois game? Well, granted, they lose that game, and now they roll in with the top 10 scoring defense in the country. Dare I say that we could actually start calling them the Black Shirts? I think that you can throw it out there. They're a top 10 scoring defense in our sport. The biggest improvement, however, for Nebraska is certainly on the offensive side, and it certainly lies in the hands of their quarterback, true freshman Dylan Raiola. This guy is incredibly talented, man. I'm telling you. I knew he was just from watching games, but then you go and you watch the tape, and he jumps off the tape. They've got a couple of guys that they can throw to, but nothing that jumps or pops or scares you as a defense. And I think that that's the only thing that's really holding back this offense. Isaiah Nair is a pretty good player on the outside. They've got decent players on the outside, but not a real threat on the outside. And if Raiola ever got a threat, this Nebraska team would be incredible. Now, having said that, they're serviceable out there. And with Raiola's talent and his ability to make throws and be accurate down the field, extend plays, it makes them dangerous enough, okay, on the offensive side. But namely, they're not turning the ball over. This was a team last year that could not get out of their own way, and specifically at the quarterback position. If you're a Nebraska fan, you know exactly what I'm talking about. All those one-score losses, and in every one of those games, they were turning the football over. And now they're not. Only 3 turnovers from Raiola on the year, and that's in 6 games. So Matt Rule's team comes in 5-1. They're just outside of the top 25, and a win on Saturday would make them 6-1 going to Columbus next week. I think this is going to be a phenomenal football game. Indiana, Nebraska in Bloomington. Big noon kickoff starts at 10 a.m. Eastern. Big noon Saturday, noon Eastern. Gus, Ginny, and I will have the call of one of the bigger games of the weekend. It's also a massive weekend elsewhere. And so let's go on the road, sponsored by Hampton by Hilton. When nothing else in life is 100% guaranteed, it matters where you stay. Hilton for the stay. And speaking of the road, Georgia heads on the road again to face what will absolutely be an incredible environment and a very difficult environment when they travel to the number one team in the country and they have to play Texas on the road. Now, the last time these two teams met, Steve Sarkisian, not at Texas. It's a Sugar Bowl, January 1st, 2019, and you'll remember Sam Ehlinger declared Texas was back, and they weren't. Now, love Ehlinger, but that was the last time these two teams played. A night game in DKR. Now, will it be to the same level of atmosphere as Tuscaloosa? Maybe. We'll see. Remains to be seen. Bryant Denny was on fire that night. And Georgia struggled in the first half. Came back and made that game an incredible game. And if it continues, do they probably win? Yeah, the way that the game was going. But they run out of time. Bama gets the pick. Georgia loses on the road. Now they're going to face a team that's better than that Alabama team in what I think that we can anticipate is at least going to be a similar environment. All right. I don't know if it's going to top what Bryant Denny was that night in Tuscaloosa, but it's going to be at least similar. I mean, this Texas fan base has waited so long to be in this position where they're the favorite. It's not an underdog kind of story. We've seen them over the last decade want desperately to be back, and now they are. They've been to the playoff. They won their conference a year ago. Now they move into the SEC. They're the number one team in the country. They're the undefeated team. They're the team with a better offensive line. They're the team with a quarterback that is vastly experienced, even though Beck is also experienced. They're the team with a defense that is playing, I think, exceptional defense, in particular coming off of a win in Red River where they allowed nothing to an inept offense in OU. They're the team that's the number one offense and defense in the country. So to me, the atmosphere should be great because this is what they have been dying for down in Austin for a long time. Great coaching matchup, by the way. Sark, Kirby, that's going to be great. Texas is a 3.5-point favorite in this one at the time that I'm recording this. Now, Georgia's going to play desperate because a loss in this game puts them basically in no man's land in terms of trying to reach the SEC championship game. If they lose this week against Texas, I just don't see a path for Kirby Smart to get back to Atlanta and play for an SEC championship game, which means that there's not really a path to a first-round bye and a top 4 seed in the college football playoff. It also brings into the equation the possibility that they would have to go on the road in the first round of the playoff. It makes winning a national championship much harder. Now, I don't think exponentially harder, but pronounced, it makes it much more difficult. So I do think you're going to get a bit of a desperate team in Georgia, back against the wall mentality. How does that play out? Do we see them fix what went wrong in the first half in an emotional environment in Tuscaloosa and play better in the first half against Texas? Probably, especially with that experience that they've got in that game. They got off to that slow start. Unlikely that happens again. Here's where I think the game lies, though. I think that the team with the better offensive line wins the game because the better offensive line controls the game. They control everything about the game. They control the tempo of the game. They control how comfortable the quarterback is, both from a pressure standpoint and ease of passing attempt standpoint. Remember, I always go back to this. If you're throwing the football, let's say just like 28 times or 30 times, and 20 of them are on your terms and only 10 are in obvious situations, you're in the driver's seat. If you're throwing it 30 times and 15 of them are in obvious situations and 15 are on your terms, you're not in the driver's seat. And the offensive line holds that equation in their hands. The better offensive line in this game is Texas. They're more experienced, they're healthier, and I just think that they're better overall. Remember, this group up front for Texas largely has played together for 3 years. There are draft picks up there. Meanwhile, Georgia's offensive line has been banged up. Now, they might get their center back, but they lost their guard a few weeks ago. Their run game has been inconsistent. They've played 6 games so far, and 3 of those 6 games, they've run the ball for under 4 yards per carry. To me, that puts too much pressure on Carson Beck. Now, he answered the bell and threw for over 400 yards, and he can, right? Like we saw it in the second half against Alabama. The problem is that, again, this Texas team is better than Alabama. This Texas team is also at home. This Texas team has a great offensive line. They can control the entire pace and tempo of this game. Even if it doesn't go well for Texas over stretches, which inevitably will happen, they can control the overall arc of the game. To me, that's where the game is won and lost. That's why I like Texas in this game. I like Texas 34-31. Now, that does mean a Georgia cover because I've got it at Texas minus 3.5, and I think that they get a 3-point win, 34-31. And let's just hope, as college football fans, that we get another classic because every time we've seen these top 5 teams tangle this year, it's been an absolute classic. We got it with Bama, Georgia. We got it with Ohio State, Oregon. And now let's hope we get it with Texas and Georgia this Saturday night in DKR. We owe it to ourselves. I think that's the one thing. Isaiah Bond, by the way, is day-to-day after that ankle injury in the Red River game. Texas probably needs him. He is day-to-day. But again, like the game is held in the hands of the offensive line. Texas is the best offensive line in the country. This is, by the way, the reason I have them number one. Even though Oregon got that huge win, it's like Texas is just really good. And they're very sound, and I think that they're going to play well. Let's move on in the SEC. Bama goes on the road. They're at Tennessee. Bama is a 2.5-point favorite in this game at Tennessee. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I wouldn't have expected Bama to be the favorite, but then you get the struggles from Tennessee on the offensive side. This game is massive in the SEC race because the loser, like Georgia, puts themselves in a position where there's really not a path to the SEC championship game. And quite frankly, with the rest of their schedules, you can start to see like, man, if they lose a third game, you're talking about this team, the loser of this game, maybe not getting in the college football playoff. So massive game. Implications galore, both within the conference and on the national stage for the college football playoff. This is the first meeting, by the way, since that incredible game that we saw in Knoxville a couple of years ago in 2022, the 52-49 win for Tennessee. They carried the goalposts out. They threw them in the river. Although, credit Vandy and their fans. Vandy's fans actually walked like 3 miles with the goalposts. They didn't just like walk out and throw it right outside the stadium. Like Vandy's basically, listen to me, Tennessee fans, Vandy fans more committed. I don't know what. Granted, there were 70% Bama fans in the stadium that day when Vandy won, but they walked the goalpost 3 miles. So if you win this weekend, let's see what you got. Where are you taking the goalposts? How far can you walk them? I'm just saying it better be more than 3 miles. It better be more than 3 miles. Strength against strength in this game, weakness against weakness. And we all know where this is headed. When Alabama's offense is on the field, going against Tennessee's defense, these are two of the elite offenses and defenses in college football. When Milroe has the ball, this is going to be an absolute show, right? Like I can't wait to watch this. The chess match between the coaches, the battle up front between Alabama's offensive line and Tennessee's defensive line, which I think Tennessee's defensive line is incredible. Tennessee's defense is the reason that they're in this position to begin with because their offense has gone totally MIA. I really enjoy watching Tennessee's defense play, and they're going to face a Bama offense that's one of, if not the most explosive offense in college football. Meanwhile, when the opposite units walk onto the field and we get Nico Iamaleava against the Alabama defense, it's like struggle bus time because both of those sides of the football are in desperate need of improvement. Think about this. Tennessee is yet to allow 20 points in a game this year, and Bama has allowed 33 points per game in SEC play. You couldn't get more opposite matchups when Tennessee has the ball versus when Alabama has the ball. Now, what does it come down to? Well, I think that we can say with some confidence that we know what we're going to get from Tennessee's D and Alabama's O. I think Tennessee can hold Bama to the mid-20s, and yet that's still pretty impressive because Bama scores in the mid-20s, which no one has been able to do on Tennessee. So you're going to get a Bama team that can get to Tennessee's defense a little bit, and yet it's also a Tennessee defense that can limit Alabama to a point that they haven't been limited to this point. At least that's what I anticipate in this game. So here's the question. On the struggle bus side, who improves fastest? When Tennessee has the ball and Bama is trying to defend them, who improves the fastest? That's where the game is going to be won and lost. And to me, while not easy, I do feel like there is a bit of philosophy that you can apply to this. When it comes to offense, and specifically quarterback, and Nico Iamaleava has struggled over the last couple of weeks. He really has. When that's happening, there's a combination of things like timing is wrong. The anticipation of the quarterback is wrong. The confidence of the quarterback and the offense is wrong. And those are incredibly difficult things to fix because offense is about details, execution, timing, spacing. There are so many things to fix, and it's tough to practice it when it's not live. Meanwhile, How do you fix defensive football? Well, two ways, really: structure and effort. And if you do either of those things better, your defense should improve. So, what I'm trying to tell you is that it's much easier for a defense to try to correct wrongs and get better than it is an offense to correct wrongs and get better. So, if you're seeing both of these units struggle a little bit, where would you put money on one of them improving? Mine would be Bama's defense. Nico Iamaleava has not shown me over the last few weeks that it's going to get better. He continues to hold the ball too long, and he is not an anticipatory thrower. That spells bad news for Tennessee, because it comes down to, like, can Tennessee's offense do something that they haven't been able to do over the last few weeks, which is go and score mid-20s or into the 30s. And against this Bama defense, even though they have struggled, I just don't think that they can. Bama's favored by 2.5. I don't think that that's enough. I've got a Bama cover, 24-20. They win it by 4, and I fully anticipate a Nico interception or 2. Maybe they get to 20 points. Maybe they don't. I think Bama covers. I think this defense plays a little bit better. But again, a lot of that is the struggling Tennessee offense. And then you get a Bama offense that can do enough against an elite defense in the Vols. That's where I think this is. I trust Jalen Milroe more than I trust Nico Iamaleava. Give me Bama 24-20 as 2.5-point favorites. Michigan at Illinois. Now this is a hard one. Michigan's favored by 3.5. And you look at that and you're just like, oh boy. Now, truth be told, this is how I do this. I don't look at lines, and I analyze the game, and I come up with a score. And then I look at the line and I think to myself, okay, that's what I've got. So Michigan is a 3.5-point favorite. Before I knew it, this is where I was with this game. The first thing I asked myself is, what are we going to see out of Michigan? Now, this is what I anticipate seeing out of Michigan. We saw the best version of the Wolverines through a few of those series in the middle of the second quarter against Washington when Jack Tuttle was thrown into the game. Now, it should be noted, he did not have a lot of practice time or any practice time before getting thrown into that game. So what you saw was total raw instinct quarterback play. And through 3 of those series, it was like, hold on a second. This looks really good. We saw some downfield passing. We saw Marion Walker catch a ball across the middle. And you're like, hold on a second. Hold all tickets. Could Michigan be back? Now, it faltered over the next few series, and Jack Tuttle was too antsy in the pocket. He fumbled a couple of times. He left the pocket too early. All things that I think can actually get cleaned up. You get more reps, and those are things that you can calm yourself down. As the game slows down in your mind, your feet slow down underneath you as a quarterback. So the question becomes, like, after a bye week and 2 weeks of full practice with Jack Tuttle at quarterback, what version of Michigan's offense do we see? I anticipate seeing the best version of Michigan's offense that we've seen all year. We're going to see a lot more of those 3 quality series against Washington, and that should open up the run game. That should allow them to be better on third down, and that should allow them to sustain drives. If they sustain drives, they rest their defense. If they rest their defense, it becomes a better and more elite defense because of their lack of depth as it in relation to last year. So you start these domino effects, and you're like, okay, I think that we're going to see a really good version of Michigan. Meanwhile, I really love Illinois too. Illinois is a team that I'm high on. They're coming off a strange game. Granted, now they were leading Purdue 27-3, facing Brett Bielema's old defensive coordinator, the old Illinois defensive coordinator, Ryan Walters, as he's the head coach at Purdue. They're up 27-3. They take the foot off the gas. Purdue comes storming back. They take the lead. Illinois has to go tie it. They go to overtime, and then Illinois ends up winning the football game. I'm a fan of Luke Altmaier. He's got Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin on the outside. These are guys that made life very difficult for Nebraska in that win in Lincoln. I'm thinking that they can make life difficult on this Michigan secondary, in particular if Michigan can't get to the quarterback and Luke Altmaier. So Like, where does that leave us? It leaves us in a really close game. And the whole key to this game is going to be Jack Tuttle and whether he can retain possession. So there's two things that I think about when it comes to retaining possession. Can you sustain drives and not turn the football over? You see, Michigan has turned the ball over far too often this year as opposed to last year. They have 12 turnovers already this year. They had 8 all of last year. So that's far too many. It's putting their defense in a precarious spot. Their field position is not what it was a year ago, and that turnover margin has got to get better. I think with 2 weeks of practice, it gets better. Okay? So this is the score I came up with. I'm sitting there and I think to myself, I think we're going to see a better Michigan. I do like Luke Altmaier. I like Pat Bryant. I like Zachary Franklin. I think that Illinois probably gets like 3 touchdowns, and I think that Michigan gets a short field on one series and they get an extra field goal. It's like 24-21. So in a 3.5-point line, I actually like Michigan 24-21, but I like Illinois to cover in this game. This game is at Illinois, and I think you're going to have to see a quality version of Michigan, which I'm anticipating. So that's where I see this game. 24-21, a 3-point win for Michigan, but a 3.5-point spread. Illinois covers. All right, this is happening now for a second straight year. Let's go to LSU at Arkansas. And again, I do the score first, analyze the game, and then I look at the line. So let me just go to the score I gave first. So before I get to the actual game, I thought after looking at this and looking at these teams, and I went back and watched some of the LSU game over Ole Miss on tape, and I'm like, man, I'm a big fan of Nussmeier. Like, he made some giant throws late in that game against Ole Miss, and there's something about the role that this LSU team is on. And so I thought to myself, I think that they win this game like 31-21. Because I know, Arkansas's quarterback, Taylon Green, he's a bit banged up, and he's a dual threat guy. So you're minimizing his impact on the game. And I'm like, yeah, 10-point win. Then I looked at the line. LSU favored by 2.5. And I'm like, wait a second. This for the second straight year. This happened last year when I looked at the LSU Arkansas line, and I was like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. That's too close of a line. And sure enough, Vegas was right last year. And now the same thing is happening again. The same thing is, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. I'm like, wait, hold on. What? Really? Arkansas? I understand their defense played well over the last couple of weeks, right? They had that game in a neutral site against Texas A&M. They lost that one, 21-17. Then they got the win, 19-14 over Tennessee. Like, is Arkansas for real? 2.5? I mean, isn't Nussmeier better than Nico Iamaleava? He is in my estimation. Let's get to the analysis here. Okay, LSU, they've played some exciting games. We know that. They lost that game to USC. They played that one with South Carolina down to the wire, and then last week's overtime game. Nussmeier led the dramatic win. I think his confidence has got to be through the roof. Through the roof. Then you've got Arkansas. Super athletic, mobile quarterback Taylon Green, but banged up. Is that going to limit his ability to use his legs? LSU has been doing a great job of getting to the quarterback, by the way. So this defense could have an opportunity to get to Taylon Green. They're 4th in the country in sacks per game. Braden Swinson has been really good. He's got, 7 on the year? He had 2 against Ole Miss alone. Blake Baker has done a great job with that defense. A great job with that defense. They've improved because they needed to improve. Remember, this was a unit that did not play very well a year ago. Meanwhile, Arkansas's defense held Nico Iamaleava to under 160 yards passing in their last game. But I don't know what that means. Because Tennessee has just really struggled on the offensive side. Their quarterback play is not very good right now. Isn't Nussmeier better than that? I think so. I just don't love where I'm at in this game. This one threw me for a loop. Brian Kelly's won 14 straight against unranked teams. He's now 21-2 against unranked teams as the LSU head coach. And I like him by 10. Even I know it's on the road. 2.5 points. I'm just relying on the heater at this point. That's what I'm relying on. We're 14-2 in the last 3 weeks. I trust myself, right? No? Do I not? Are you sensing indecision? Yeah. Yeah, you're sensing indecision. I don't know what to do with this game. I've got LSU 31-21. Do with that what you will. If you're not going to throw any on that, I understand. I totally understand. By the way, though, if they do cover, we're going to take a victory lap because that's what we do. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you celebrate your own successes? You know what? In life, we should all just like enjoy and celebrate the successes and blessings in life. And if LSU covers, that would be a nice little blessing. You know what I mean? Miami is at Louisville, number 6 Miami. I'm looking at this game and I'm thinking to myself, at some point, Miami's defense is going to have to improve, right? Right? This is a game that they clearly have had circled on their schedule because a while ago, it was the only ranked team left on their schedule. Now, Louisville, is not ranked anymore. They haven't had a ranked win of current teams. They don't have any ranked teams left on their schedule. Louisville's not ranked. And it's like at some point, Miami's going to have to raise themselves up and improve on the defensive side. That's the big question for me. They've given up 34 and 38 points in back-to-back games to Va Tech and Cal. It's not like those are offensive juggernauts. Those are two middle-of-the-pack ACC offenses. We know what Miami is on the offensive side. Cam Ward is a Heisman contender. He should be a Heisman finalist. They've got the number 1 offense in the country. This guy is playing about as well as anybody. He's super talented, man. And by the way, he plays best when his best is needed. Think about some of those possessions when these games are tight, late. Cal, Virginia Tech, like this dude battles. I love that about him. He's just kind of an unconscious passer of the football. He's ridiculously talented. And now you go face Louisville. I get it, it's on the road, but like at some point, these close wins are going to have to turn into more substantial wins. Tyler Shuck for Louisville. He's been developing nice chemistry with Alabama transfer Ja'Cory Brooks, 3rd in the ACC in receiving. Shuck has also thrown interceptions in 3 straight games. There's part of me that believes Miami's defense is going to get better. They got Ruben Bain back against Cal. They're like, does he continue to inject some life into that defense? They've got to, man. They've got to, right? Right? I have 38-31, Miami winning on the road. That's a cover of the 4.5 point spread. I just am going to bank on the fact that the defense is going to get better. Miami's got the number 1 offense in the country, man. Like, it's going to be tough for Louisville. It's going to be tough for Louisville, but that's where we've seen teams like go and lose. Remember last year's Notre Dame game? So I like Miami in that one. Last one I want to talk about, and this one might surprise you. Oregon at Purdue. And you're thinking to yourself like, wait, what? Well, I've been thinking about this game since the summertime. And here's why. Because you know Oregon is going to be a massive favorite, which they are. 27.5 points over Purdue. And yet, what do we see all the time in college football? Teams underperform the week after their most emotional win. We saw it with Bama losing to Vanderbilt after beating Georgia. I think that we see it with Oregon and Purdue. Now, Vandy is a lot better than Purdue. So I'm not suggesting that Purdue is going to win the game, but 27.5 is too much. They're traveling 2,000 miles and they have to play them on Friday night. Friday night road games as the favorite never goes well for those teams. Meanwhile, Purdue is sitting there and they just played their best game, albeit in a loss to Illinois, but their best game. So here's what's happened at Purdue. Purdue was struggling mightily. Okay. Ryan Walters is a friend of mine. He was my teammate at Colorado. He's a hell of a football coach. He gets the head job at Purdue. He's a defensive-oriented coach. A couple of years ago, he had that great defense at Illinois, gets the job at Purdue, and they've struggled. And he had Graham Harrell as their offensive coordinator. Now, he relieved Graham Harrell of his duties and fires Graham Harrell. And guess who took over the offensive play calling duties? Ryan himself, with his defensive background. And then they just dropped 49 on Illinois and came all the way back and had a chance to win that game. So this is a team that is straining, getting better and better and better. They have a little bit of a new jolt of energy on the offensive side with a new play caller, which is their head coach, Ryan Walters, which, by the way, gets you to practice harder, play harder, prepare better, all of those things. Purdue at home will play fairly well. And I guarantee we're going to see Oregon sleepwalk a little bit. It's just human nature. This is nothing against Dan Lanning. It's nothing against Dylan Gabriel or any of the players. It's just human nature. It is human nature. After last week's emotional 1-point win over Ohio State at home with that environment, now you've got to travel on a short week and you've got to play a Purdue team that's getting better and better and better, which no one in your locker room thinks anything of because of how bad they were earlier in the season. And you've got to play on the road on a Friday night. 27.5 is too much. It's too much. Ryan Brown, he got the start for Purdue as quarterback, and Ryan did a great job with him. He threw for nearly 300 yards. He ran it for 118 yards. Spoiler makers, man, I think that they make this interesting. Now, I'm going to give you this score, and you're going to think, Joel, that's not a close game. But guess what? It's a Purdue cover. I've got Oregon getting a score late, getting their act together late in the game after kind of sleepwalking through this game. I think Oregon wins this one 42-28. But this is a trap game. I have been circling this one since the summertime. You come off of that win. By the way, they've got a couple of monsters coming up where they face some teams that are going to be a little bit tougher. So you look at that Purdue team, I think Purdue covers. Oregon wins it 42-28, and Purdue is a 27.5-point dog. So that'll do it. Remember, we're on a heater, 25-12 on the year. Let's hope it continues, folks. Let's hope it continues this week. And enjoy the games. As always, we'll talk to you on Monday.